Before we get started, I'm just going to have the folks, faculty and staff, introduce yourself and also describe yourself for the video. So, my name is Marian Mansler. I'm the program manager of education at the Loft. Um, as you can see on your screen, I'm a Filipino American woman wearing a purple sweater. My corkboard and whiteboard in the back have endless to-do lists behind me. Not pictured is my dog sleeping on his bed below me. And then I'll let my colleague Jack go next.
Hello, I'm Jack. I was just chatting with someone at the door, so sorry I missed the introduction, Marianne. Um, I am sitting in the loft offices, which behind me is like a beige wall. In front of me, I promise, is much prettier with all of my decorations. Um, are we describing ourselves too, you said, Marianne?
Yep.
Okay. I am a man wearing a green sweater and blonde hair. I have glasses and some headphones on.
Thank you. Junauda.
Hi, my name is Junauda. I am, do I introduce myself or just what, like
Yeah,
audio
just
description?
yeah, just audio description.
I'm wearing bright red lipstick. I am caramel complected. I have a keffiyeh in a head wrap style, have like a lilac um sweater on, and I'm in a room with a bookshelf and randomness in it. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you. Hugh.
Hello, hi. My name is Hugh. I am an Asian American male presenting person. I'm wearing round glasses. I have a little mustache. And I'm sitting in a sunny room in Oakland, California, with lots of plants behind me.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much. I think Jack got some conversation going in the chat, so please share with us where you're zooming in from, your name, and what brings you here. Are you interested in fiction, poetry? What are you working on? I'm gonna go over information about the Loft, about the program. We have some students here from past cohorts who would like to share with you their experiences. Um, we'll hear from each of the mentors about their projects, and I've got some administrative details I'll go over at the end, and then Q&A. This will be as I mentioned, recorded session. And then if anything's not showing up correctly on my screen or you can't hear me, let me know, stop me. Yeah, I want to make sure y'all can hear me. So a little bit about the Loft. We're celebrating 50 years, so really exciting to be able to offer to you this year-long writing project experience with our two new mentors. The Loft advances the power of writers and readers to craft and share stories, create connections, and build life-sustaining communities. So I think the year-long writing project fits perfectly into that as one of our programs that really does promote community building and making writing less of a lonely task. Some of the core elements about the year long. So it features craft instruction and mentoring with your teaching artist. You've got a small cohort workshop style. So, at a max 12 to 15 people. There's an individual study aspect. So there'll be breaks. And during those breaks, you'll work with your teaching mentor to see what that time looks like. A lot of times it can look like reading, writing, or rest, of course. And then you'll hear more about these later, but they'll be visiting authors, publishing professionals, editors, and agents who will come through your cohort, typically later, so not to distract from the work. And then We've got individual manuscript consultations. So you'll meet with your mentor 4 times throughout the duration of your program one-on-one. One time at the beginning, so before registration happens, to ensure that there's a fit, twice during the program, and you'll work that out with each of your individual mentors, and then once at the end with the final manuscript consultation. There's also a ton of cross-programming opportunities in terms of getting involved with other events at the Loft, volunteering if you're interested in that. And we have opportunities to, whenever we have visiting writers come into town, we always let our year-long folks know what's going on in advance. And then there's the final public reading. That's the opportunity for you and your cohort members to showcase all of your hard work and to hear a little bit from your manuscript in progress. Okay. So these are all June start, actually, and they take place via Zoom. So each of these cohorts will be online for the duration, and we've got poetry apprenticeship and fiction coming up, and you'll hear from them shortly. Orientation, just to throw some dates your way right now, orientation is on May 28th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We ask that all folks who register and sign up for the cohorts that they participate in that. The general schedule is that there are 3 terms. So you've got the summer, which is 8 weeks. You've got the fall, which is 12 weeks. There is a break in between summer and fall, and then there's a break between fall and winter. And in winter, that's 12 weeks. And so based on each of your individual, whether it's poetry or fiction, they're on different timetables. So you have to look closely at their websites. We'll drop the link in the chat if you can do that, Jack, to each of their pages. And then, yeah, we mentioned all of that. Okay, so we have some students. They're actually alumni now. So we have some students who are joining us and would like to share a little bit about their experiences. So I'm going to actually stop sharing. We just talked a lot at y'all. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. Let's hear from Heather.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Zaring. Pronouns are she, her. I'm a middle-aged white woman with kind of long brown hair and a bookshelf behind me. So I'm an alum of the fiction cohort, and that wrapped up at the end of last year. And then we had our reading in January. It was a great experience, and I'm so glad I did it. We had a wonderful group that was on Zoom as well. Which wasn't a problem as far as making those connections. We spent a lot of really quality time with each other, critiquing each other's work, both verbally and then in written form. And everybody got to present a good amount of work as well. I definitely grew quite a lot as a writer. And one of the reasons that I enrolled was, one, for the feedback and the camaraderie, but 2, because I just really needed somebody to expect me to do this work and kind of give me some structure. And that worked really well. And I did complete the second draft of my novel, first draft and then second draft within that time, just following the direction of our teaching artist. Thanks. And I'll be working on another revision this year, and then hopefully, maybe getting it out into the world. Fingers crossed. And then one thing I do think is really important for this is just making sure that you set aside the time. It's a pretty meaty commitment. So I think for most people, it's doable as long as you're really deliberate about making sure that you make the time. I'm a full-time single parent to a teenager who works full-time. I'm not a person with like boundless energy, anything like that, but I just kind of rearranged a few things in my life to make it work. So I would give that advice to just make sure you structure things so that it's going to work for you. But overall, I'm extremely happy to have participated in this, and happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Heather. Oh my gosh. Leah, are you here, Leah?
I'm here.
Oh, hey, sorry. I would love to hear from you and how the poetry apprenticeship went for you.
Yeah, hi all. Leah, middle-aged white woman wearing a lot of neutrals, background and in the foreground here tonight. And yeah, I just finished the year-long poetry apprenticeship with Hyde Erdrich and a group of 10 of us from mostly the Twin Cities area, but a couple from outside of it, and had our final reading, I guess maybe 6 weeks ago now. So this time last year, we were really digging in, and it's fun to think back. I second what Heather said. You know, it's definitely a commitment, and the more you can commit to just the cadence of it and investing the time and energy, the more you'll get out of it. So I have 2 young kids. You may hear them screaming and fighting in the background right now. And am a freelancer, so also lead a busy life. But I just really appreciated the apprenticeship so much because it helped just keep me committed to my writing. I entered the program with poems that I'd written over the last few years, but no sense of where to kind of go with them. And it was such a nice mix of both learning about poetry and studying it, reading new authors, books, having the guest people come in, building that network, but then mostly time to really write new poems, and then towards the end of the year, figure out how to order them and present them as a manuscript. So, entered the year with, I don't know, maybe 20 poems and left with a manuscript that I now feel is complete and I'm submitting to publishers. So it feels like, it's a doable thing, but it's what you make of it. And really appreciated the folks that I met and connected with and what I learned from them as well. Felt like our cohort, we were able to learn from each other too. So, I don't know. I'm also happy to answer questions about the poetry side of things, either, tonight, or happy to connect with folks in an email if that's helpful as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And then let's hear from Dan about how novel writing went for you this past
Yeah,
year.
hi. Dan, I'm 65, retired white male with a very dignified receding hairline. So anyway, the year-long novel writing project was really an amazing experience. First and foremost, because of the people involved in the class, both my teacher and my classmates, who Heather was one of them. And I would say that everybody had a high level of quality and commitment and intelligence and passion for writing, which really made a huge difference in the feedback you get on your writing. And so you're submitting chunks of your work throughout the year, 25 pages at a time, and then 50 pages later, and another 25 pages. And they're reading it and getting really, giving really thoughtful input in a very positive way. They're not tearing you apart or anything like that, which as a writer, you want your self-esteem obviously to thrive during the whole process. And so everybody was really good at that. Our teacher Peter was fantastic, and the bringing in like besides published authors to speak to us about their experience, plus the agent and the publishing editor, really was valuable. I couldn't put a value on that for me as a new writer. So the whole experience with the people involved was very, very incredible. I would echo what Heather said, and the others person had said, that if you put in the time, you really need to put in the time, however that works for you. The more you can put in, the better the experience will be. So I've finished my novel and have done a bunch of editing on it, and I'm hoping to finish my editing within maybe a month or so, and then be able to start submitting to it. The But as far as the class goes on Zoom, it worked out really well. We had people in Los Angeles and in Virginia. And then one of our classmates was even on a trip through Australia on a train, and she zoomed in on the class, and it all worked out great. So I kind of wondered how that would work having classes on Zoom, but it really worked well. And so, yeah, it's a win-win if you're going to take a writing class. This is a win.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. Okay, I'm gonna bring my screen back. Okay, so now we're going to hear from our amazing mentors. I'm going to start with Junauda Petrus. She's our fiction writing project mentor. Also, most recent poet laureate. Congratulations. Um, all right, Junauda, we would love to hear from you.
Hi there. I'm so excited to be in this program, to be working with fiction writers. Um, I'm a person, and just to clarify, everybody can hear me fine?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm a fiction writer who got to fiction writing by way of being a playwright, being a poet, being a dancer, performance artist. Um, I think that so much of fiction is getting to live in the wondrous weirdness, wildness, magic of life, both that lives within us and beyond us. And a lot of also writing a novel is a lot of emotional and mental athleticism. Like it's a long journey. It's a lot of time to be with yourself. It's a lot of time to be um, with all of the inspiration that your novel is calling you into. And so a lot of what I want to focus on in this class is getting people creating the life and rituals that allow you to come to the page and to your writing again and again. Um, I've written a novel, I've written a kid's book, I'm working on another novel, and they've both been deeply yeah, explorative, emotional, fantastic, unfathomable, indescribable journeys. And I think that's what's amazing about novels. Like they're different than other art forms. They're um people like live with you when they're reading your books. Having a novel into the world, I get to meet young people and people of all ages, actually. My novel that I have out is a young adult novel, um, who, really get to live and know these characters that we create. And I know as a young person, I definitely felt deep communion and kinship with the books I read and the characters within it. Um, so yeah, I am excited to work with a cohort that wants to encourage each other to be weird, be out there, be experimental, be okay with not being perfect and making mistakes that land you into what you're really fully trying to create. Um, what else? Let me see if there's anything else I want to share. I also, because, I come from a movement background and a meditation and embodiment and yoga background, I'm not going to like force anybody to do anything that feels like, oh my God, I came here to write. I did not come here to downward dog. It's not going to be like that. But I do think there's so many ways that being a person that comes from a performance and movement background, I have to remind myself that, like, oh, yeah, my whole body exists as a writer. Like, what ways do I need to just ground in my body, ground in my breath, um, pay attention to birds that I notice, be in the world, be in nature. So, encouraging people to show up to the page, but also show up and be present to the world. And knowing that I also want you all to complete something. I don't know what that is. Like, I'm not gonna be like, you're gonna write a novel in a year. I don't know your life. I don't know your story. but I do want you to develop a comfort and sort of juicy relationship with your writing where you're like, yay, like I get to write. Oh my gosh, this character won't leave me alone. I woke up with them on my mind. Like, oh, here it is. Um, and not to feel like this kind of goal driven, like I need to write these pages, I need to get, I mean, and this voice is my voice in my head. I'm not judging the voices in your head. The voice in my head sometimes as a writer is like what I need to get, like treating it like a, like capitalism, right? Where it's like, and novel writing is capitalism, right? It is a part of that. You could self-publish, but a lot of us will navigate the ways that capitalism will come and try to influence us as artists and writers. And what I really want you to trust is that you building a beautiful writing life will allow you to write the books that reflect you soulfully and will end up where they're supposed to be. I will do my best for that. That's what I can tell you. And I'm really nice and I'm really warm and I really want you to win. I'm very loving, very encouraging, very gentle. So, yeah. Is there anything else I should say, Marianne, or is that about it?
Do you have any sneak peeks to who might be visiting your cohort at all?
Okay, so I wanted to have people choose their own adventure because I was thinking, oh, I could talk to this person, I could talk to that person. Some names that I came up with, and mind you, I ain't asked these people, but I feel like they're people that will obey me. Just not at all, but who are like, yay, Junauda, cool, we'll do the thing you're interested in. So here's some people I've thought of. Carvel Wallace, who's a tremendous writer. Oh, I love him. Brilliant. Alexis Duveau. She's like, she's, oh my God, she's a sorcerer. She's magical, brilliant writer. Sharon Bridgeforth, who's like theatrical jazz, like experimental writing. Candace Elo is another young adult writer. They're brilliant. Joseph Earl Thomas, another multi-genre writer who also does fiction. Shannon Gibney, local boo, sweetheart, brilliant fiction writer. And then Andrew Carr, who's my editor at Dutton Penguin, who's just a sweetie. He's cool. Like all these people are sweeties. So I think I want to be mindful, like whoever's in the cohort, people might be like, I really want to have something more craft oriented. Or I know that particular person's work, or I Googled them and I'm feeling them. Or you might be like, oh, I've never gotten a chance to talk to an editor. Here's some questions I would have for one. So yeah, like those are the people that came off my mind as far as who to ask and let people choose if there's anybody else.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so if you have questions for Junauda, feel free to share them in the chat. We'll also have time at the end for any questions specific to her cohort, but hers will be on Thursday nights with some Saturdays in the summer. We dropped the cohort calendar in the chat. Okay, and then you can see my screen. Our poetry apprenticeship mentor, Minh-Nguyen.
Hello. Hi everybody. So grateful to get to do this. Very excited to get to do this. I I grew up in the Twin Cities and I like as a high schooler I would go to the loft all the time. And then I was like cutting school and I was like hanging out in the open book office. Though maybe I shouldn't say that. But I have been obsessed with poetry like for most of my life. I've been calling myself a poet since I was in high school. It was really the only thing I cared about. And so I was a really bad student because the only thing I cared about was poetry. And I think my hope and goal for everybody who's in this cohort is to find ways to sustain the obsession and sustain that curiosity in poetry, right? Like, I think as artists, we're always gonna go through like ups and downs with the craft, right? Like I think that's like part of like loving it so much is to like also have moment like those big moments of doubt, right? Like is this the right form? Is poetry um giving giving me as much as I'm trying to give to it. And yeah, and I think the my goal for the cohort is to, yeah, find ways to have poetry be like a lifelong companion rather than something that is something that we take and give back from, if that makes sense. Along with, the other goal is to write a book. I have written uh I have two books published, and I just finished my third one, and I've had very different experiences writing each one. One book I wrote in the span of a year, one book I wrote in the span of like 3 years, and then this one, it's taken me close to 8, 9 years to finish. And so there's like a really long process and very different processes. And so I'm excited to kind of meet you where you're at in your process, right? Like I think what Leah was saying, like you came with like 20 poems ready for, right, it you entered the class with 20 poems and you left, right, with a full manuscript. And um yeah, I'm excited to meet you, whether you're at 20 poems or you're at 10, um or you're at 20 and you're like, I actually really want to be at 0, and I think like the book is, I'm excited to hear your vision for your book. And I think if anybody has seen like The Brutalist, I haven't, but there's like this quote that's going around about Michelangelo, who when he's talking about the statue of David, he talks about like he saw within the marble an angel, and so set forth to set him free. And that sounds like ideal, right? To like to know, to see the vision and then set forth and to like make the thing. But I think that sounds boring. I feel like that I think the part of the process that is exciting for me is the doubt, is the moments that we don't know what the book is going to be, and we have to figure out how to start talking about our vision, to start shaping away the things we don't want it to be, to start kind of shaping our questions for our book, for our project, and so to kind of create those questions as a guide for ourselves. And I think sometimes the best ways to do that is with a group of people. Writing a book is part of being a writer is like very lonely and isolating, but it's not the only way to be a writer. I think I've been really lucky to have since I was in high school, I found communities of writers everywhere I went, and I like would always ask for help, anytime I needed someone to hear a poem or hear thoughts on my book. Like every time I have that doubt, I like will release my manuscript to a friend to like as like a sounding board. And like this cohort is going to be so lucky because we get to everybody here is kind of on the same journey, right? Different journeys, but like kind of um rooting for each other, right? We all want to walk away having helped each other, but also having gained, right, a clearer vision for what we want our books to be. And so yeah, excited to be on this journey, excited to meet people where they're at, excited to write new poems, figure out what your obsessions are, and yeah, give your poems the life they deserve.
Thank you so much. Did you want to give us a sneak peek of who might be visiting your cohort?
Yeah, so I have very similar to Junauda, some of these names I haven't formally asked, but they'll do it. I have a close friend of mine, Sam Sachs, who um, is a novelist, poet, has 3 poetry books, like 4 chapbooks, and a novel out. Sam has had like a really interesting journey because Sam writes a lot, right? Works on multiple projects at once. Um, Sam, while Sam was trying to get their first book published, they were already submitting their second book, and so the their first official full-length collection that was actually published was actually the second book they wrote. And so it just like happened that way. And so yeah, I think Sam would be a really interesting person to talk about like many different processes, and also like they have such a wide um like collection of work that we can look at. Um Safia El Hilo, who is a poet, also like a YA author, a novelist, fashionista, is also, I think, a great person to talk to. I think um, Safia's work is the one of my favorite things about like Safia is that when Safia reads their poems out loud, um, they read it kind of all as one poem. And so even if they're like flipping through their book and if they're hopping around, all the poems kind of flow seamlessly into each other. And so that's like one, if we're talking about like a poetry collection being cohesive and kind of being linked, I think like Safia is a great person to learn from. Um, there's, I mean, Another possibility is Dinesh Smith, who I went to high school with, who's also Minnesotan. Um, uh, yeah, very lucky to have been got to witness, the creations of many of their books. One of their books, Don't Call Us Dead, which was the uh, finalist for the National Book Awards. I remember when that book was originally 2 different books, and at one point they wrote it was 2 books. One book was called Blood and one book was Summer Somewhere. And I think their Jeff Schatz at Grey Wolf was like trying to convince them to make it one book, and they were like coming to us and their friends and being like, it's not 2 books, and we're like, well, maybe. And so watching them, getting to witness how they like merged these 2 books into like one cohesive thing was also a really yeah, really special experience. And so yeah, maybe we can talk to them about like different ways of merging ideas, how to create a conversation out of 2 really disparate topics. Yeah, those are some ideas of poets. Some editors and industry professionals I'm thinking about is Erica Stevens, who was editor at Coffee House Press when my second book was published there, and is now a literary agent, and so kind of understands like kind of 2 different spaces in the literary professional publishing side, that we could all talk about. Yeah.
That's amazing. Erica visited some of our past cohorts, and so she is a great resource. Remember, you can ask questions in the chat. For the 2 of you, actually, what is your approach to workshop, would you say?
I really feel like workshop is like something that if you're coming as a writer, that you are intentional about what kind of feedback and what kind of workshopping you want. Like, I think that there's so much depiction of like, writing workshops where it's like people are just kind of going in on your writing. And I've done, you know, writing workshops where I'm like, you don't get my writing. And it's okay not to get it. Not everybody has something that they need to share with someone's writing. So I do think it's very consensual, very intentional. I wrote it down actually. Let me just reference what I wrote. I wrote writer-led and grounded, intentional and specific, supportive and strategic, and empowering, and when one is ready. Because I think sometimes you just know when you're ready and you know when you're not. And also the kind of feedback you want. Like I think it's okay to be like, hey, I just want you to tell me what you like about it this round. That's where my feelings is at with it. And then something could be like, yo, is this character kind of, like tell me what you're noticing about this character. Um, and then sometimes you can ask big questions if you're like, yo, like say what you are noticing about the piece. So I really want that every feedback session, everybody leaves feeling more empowered and more kind of clear about a strategic change that feels aligned with the vision they have for the book. Or yeah, the book, because it's y'all working on a novel and this particular project. Um, what else? Did I share anything else in my notes? Um,
If you're comfortable with it, do you mind sharing your contact info in the chat if anyone wants to follow up with you, Junauda or Hugh? That would be
yeah,
great.
yeah, I think that's basically it, supportive, intentional, strategic, supportive, empowering, good feelings, juicy, juicy.
My approach to workshop, I think it's going to be different in a group that is all working towards like a larger project, and it's exciting. I think sometimes I've been a part of like, you know, uh, weekly workshops where we're expected to like bring in a poem every week, and sometimes you don't have a poem, but you're expected to bring one in, and so you bring in a poem that you don't really care about, and then you hear a bunch of feedback on a poem that you know deep down they're not going to take anywhere. And so the exciting thing about a book is, right, that the cohort is going to kind of become familiar with the mission of the book, the 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 questions that the book is asking, and um and we can see how a poem will fit into the collection, how it can expand the conversation, how or challenge the conversation if it's something uh yeah that the book might be missing. And also I like the idea. Another way I like to think of the possibilities like of a workshop in this format is to be able to bring back the same poem, right? I feel like there's like maybe, I don't know, so like a little secret shame around like bringing in the same poem for a second draft or a second workshop. But I think that would be um that's something I've definitely wanted, right? To have a poem workshop, revise it, and then bring it back in and be like, hey, same group of people who gave me feedback, what do you think of this in its revision form? Are there more things that is it worse than when I first brought it in? Like sometimes you have so much doubt. It's good to have like a consistent group of people and not a rotating group of people like in your ear. Um, I like to break up in my workshops like different phases. Um, so like when we're looking at a poem, the first phase is like what is working? What is working in this poem? What are the things we notice about this poem? What are things that the poem is in its form suggesting that isn't in the content? The second phase is like what are the questions we have? What are the moments of congestion? If we were we put our editor hats in, right? And we figure out like what if we were editors to this poem, like um what feels ornamental, what doesn't feel like it's serving the poem, uh and then like opening it up for the person being workshopped to actually, yeah, to interact with the feedback, to maybe even like play around like play around with like editing lines live. I think, yeah, I think a workshop can be really adaptive to like what you need. And like not as formal as like a traditional MFA workshop, which yeah, I feel like is like can sometimes be stuck in its like very formal um ways of offering feedback.
It sounds like both you and Junauda kind of bring humanity back into that process, which I really appreciate. Okay, I'm gonna bring back my screen. We're almost to the Q&A section, y'all. Okay, so just gonna bring the screen back of and remind you that so Janada's cohort starts on June 7th. That's when the fiction project starts. And Hugh's starts on the poetry apprenticeship starts on Tuesday, June 10th. And then for Janada's, her will continue on a Thursday schedule. So you have that information. And then as you've heard from folks in this call, the year-long writing project is a huge commitment. It is a huge financial commitment. It is $7,500 for this program. It's a year-long program, 97 hours across 12 months. And so ensuring that your project is a fit and that you are sort of up for that schedule is crucial when choosing to be part of the year long. There are payment plans available, so you have the option to work with us on paying that in installments over the course of the year. We also have an access fund program to help offset the cost of tuition. There are 2 funded spots per cohort. And it's an interview process. So essentially, you will navigate to our submittable page, and we'll drop the link for you in the chat. But it's our loft.submittable.com/submit page. So you'll navigate to this page. You will need an account to submit an application. So you'll have to create an account, but there is no cost to submit an application. And then there will be narrative questions in there that ask you questions regarding community needs. So kind of why now, why the loft? It'll ask you questions about your project. It'll ask you questions about the financial situation and then give you time to submit a short writing sample. And then we work with the teaching artist of each cohort to choose the recipients of that award. It is a pretty rigorous, or not rigorous, competitive process. And so I do encourage you, though, if you have a need to submit. Registration opens April 9th and 10th, so mark your calendars. I really hope to see some of y'all apply. Once you apply via our website, when registration opens, we will then connect you with each of the teaching artists, and then you'll get to talk to them one-on-one regarding your project and follow up with us in terms of whether or not you move forward. Any questions? I'm going to stop share now. Okay, I've got a question in the chat from Cozy. Hi, Cozy. What should I be asking myself to determine whether my project and its current status is a good fit? Yeah, do you want to take that, Janana?
Yeah, and this could be a question for everybody. I think feeling like it's kind of pushing at you in a certain kind of way. I think where you're able to really carve out the time, whatever that looks like. I think that there's this idea, and I don't, depending on you're working on a fiction novel or, working on a poetry manuscript, that you need to have hours and hours every day to write. And I think even if you have an hour or half an hour that you can commit to every day to be with yourself and your writing, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm gonna, but just to be like, yo, like, I'm gonna meditate and be with this work. I'm gonna meditate and be with this work. I think feels like a thing that I would determine and if whether this is a good thing. Because I mean, I'm very open, and I think Hugh is too, to all kinds of potential writing projects. But I think to kind of understand if like this is a good time for you in this particular project is if you feel like, oh, it's coming out of me now. Oh my gosh, I need some midwives and doulas to help me make this get to this spot. Versus I think sometimes writers, because we're prolific, even if we don't think we are, there's like always ideas, there's always these things you're like, oh, I could write this, or oh, that's a cute idea, or what have you, but it's not urgent in a certain kind of way where like we could really be supportive. So yeah, I don't know, what do you, how about for you, Hugh? What would that be?
Oh yeah, I love thinking about it as like a midwives and doulas, right? Like I think if you think your project is um in a place where you could use other people, because sometimes when you're in a writing process, sometimes we do need like um I'm in the stage where I just like kind of just need to be alone and write, and like other voices won't be helpful, right? And so if you're going to be in this class, like if the voices of the cohort isn't going to be helpful to you in this current um part of your project, yeah, I would consider that. I think I think another benefit of like a cohort model is I find it very motivating to be alongside other writers who are also like writing hard, right? Even if like, sometimes my like process, right? I am not as committed to my writing schedule as like I want to be, but then I'm motivated by my friends who are. And so like I'm, using them as like inspiration to get get your words out. Yeah, and so yeah, many different ways to be ready for the program. I think yeah, flexible with um what that means.
Thank you. Great question, Cozy. Okay, we have a question in the chat. Let's see. Okay, if we've already applied for funding, when will we be informed? And the response to that is Access Fund applications for year-long open today. So those will be open through April 18th. At that time, we'll then go through those applications with the committee and the teaching artists, and we hope to have no recipients and anyone in the who's applied to give them notice by June. Um, okay, we had another question. Do we apply for both access funds and the year-long funding program? So there, it's kind of confusing, but there are two actually. So for the year long, that's a separate application because there are a couple more components to it. And then we have in our access fund program, we have the access fund pool, which you can join. Um, and that will then give you monthly notifications about classes that are access fund eligible. So there's at least 2 access fund spots in all of our Loft education classes. So it'll give you kind of notifications about classes coming up, and that's at that 95% discount. Any other questions for our teaching artists about your project? This is the time to ask. Don't be shy. Okay. Is there a specific amount of writing that needs to be done before applying? I think this is for our teaching artists.
I think I don't know. Okay, so if you're trying to write a novel, which I don't know what necessarily description people have seen because I know I just tweaked it. Um, and I think the last one was very much like get a novel written in a year, guaranteed type stuff. Um, and I think I'm not gonna push that because sometimes I feel like having a deadline in mind can sometimes backfire. At least it has for me, where it's like, oh my gosh. But I do think if you're trying to write something that feels like some kind of a draft. It doesn't have to be a complete draft, but be like, oh, I want to act like something to share. Um, I think having a couple chapters written, I would say even 3 chapters written. And if you have 2.5 chapters written, still apply. If you got 2 chapters written, still apply. If you got 1 chapter written, still apply. Um, but I do feel like sometimes 3 feels like a number where you're like, oh, this is something that's happening. Like something could kind of happen in 3 chapters. I think it's also a way to kind of feel out some characters and some textures of the book. And knowing that those chapters might change a gazillion times. Um, and that's okay. But I think kind of having a sense of you know, not to reference the Michelangelo quote that you were all kind of playing with, but it's kind of like, yeah, like here's some clay. Do something to that clay. Oh, you wake up the next day. Okay, let me add something here. Okay. Like know that you could just come to the class with clay, knowing that we could play with the clay, but you need some clay. And the clay is like a chapter to 3 chapters. And maybe that's like 10 to 20 pages or 5 to 20 pages. I feel like I'm giving such a wide and varying range from second to second. But I think what I want to make you feel is that if you have something strong and earnest, that sometimes people can like do something wild in 5 pages. And in 20 pages, somebody can't, they're just like, oh, I want to write a book and I'm able to, whatever. And to be honest, I never judge. I think if you're willing to do anything, there's something there, if that makes sense. But I think like for me, having at least I don't know. If you're trying to write a novel, okay, let's just say 10 to 20 pages. I know that was the most convoluted answer, but you felt the vibes. Hopefully you felt the vibes. All right, how about you, Hugh? You might be able to be more concrete.
I mean, I'm not going to be more concrete with you. I think like right there Leah brought in I'm just keep on using you as like an example, but 20 poems, right? That's like a great place to start. Um there's so much can happen for that, right? From that, right? If you bring in let's say you bring like a poetry collection is not like every single poem that you've ever written, right? That doesn't make like a poetry collection. I think poetry collection is more intentional than that. And so like if you bring in like let's say like I have 100 poems written, but the book might only be like 10 of those poems, right? Um, those other 90 poems could be something else, but like the book that you might be interested in is actually around these 10 other poems. And so it could be um that you have a lot of poems written and like not the vision or like for your book, right? Like or not a clear idea of what you want the book to be, or you only have a few poems, but actually a very clear direction. Or yeah, and so I think it could be either. What I would say is that if you have less poems, maybe have more of a clear vision, right? Like if that makes sense. Um like yeah, and so if you know the direction that you're headed, I think it's easier to work with less poems because you know what you're trying to write towards. Um, but if you are just trying to write and then see what comes together from that too, which is I think is also a great process of building a book. Yeah, I think there are different ways to make a book with different levels of work entering this program, if that makes sense. But also just like don't be mad at me at the end if you like come in with like 0 poems and then also like leave with like out a finished book.
Well, I think that that's an important thing to note, which is like, it is kind of self-identified, like whether or not you feel you're ready for something like this. So, I think too, when you're considering a program like the year long, have you taken a workshop before? How have you been able to, have you received feedback on your work before, or is this going to be kind of your first experience? Not to say that it shouldn't be, but it's just something to consider when you're thinking about that kind of time commitment each week, because it's, you know, not not only just your project that you're committing to, but you're actually committing to like 11 other people's projects potentially, because you're going to be providing feedback for them. You're also going to be reading a ton. You're going to be writing a ton. So you can expect up to like, you know, numerous hours outside of class towards this endeavor. But this is why we're here, is to do the work. And, you know, we want to help you to get it done as much as you can. And then I've got a question in the chat that was a good logistical one. So I feel, Marty, were you asking about when you can join the year long? Yes. Um, and so to answer Marty's question, the both of the year longs, they start in June, and so that there's one start time for those, and that would be the time to also join. And then you would be in the program for the duration of it. So for all 3 terms.
There's also a question from J.M. Lyles asking about Hugh's experience with the differing writing pregnancies. And how do you know when a book is done after a year versus, you know, I know you had different year, what have you. So that was a question in the chat as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Hugh.
Yeah, at least with my experience, I think it's kind of similar to what I was talking about. The books that I finished in a year, I knew kind of what I wanted them to be. And so when the poem started, when I was writing the poems, I was like, okay, this helps push the book in this direction. And so by the time I finished it, I knew where like the goal was, right? Because I already had a vision of the goal. And then this current book that's taking me, 8, 9 years is that I've had all these poems and they feel related, but I just didn't know what they were saying together. Like they weren't they were all these poems, but they weren't harmonizing, right? They were making a lot of different sounds, a lot of different clatter. And so when I started writing, and then as I was writing more poems and accumulating more poems, that sound started to like blend more, and I started to see what the project was actually about. And so when that became clear, that's when I feel like the baby was starting to cook. Like that I could see its body forming.
We're going to continue with this, with JM's question regarding, so this program helps us to set the goal and plow through because I want that natural birth, y'all. So I think too, I mean, of course, Junauda and Hieu, you answer this, but I think it is what you make of it. And so it truly is up to how much time and energy and dedication you're able to apply towards this, project. And so your mentors will be there to create that scaffolding to help guide you and to give you the resources you need to do that. But it truly is up to like where you're at in your project and life as well, and how much you're able to do. But it truly is amazing. I did the creative nonfiction cohort this past year, so not only was I like managing the program, but I was in one of the projects working on my own work. And that was something that I found to be so valuable as someone who does have like a graduate degree, is like just that ability to have some accountability, and yeah, community, as Jack said in the chat. So um, it just depends if word count is what you're going for, or if it's more, if there's something else.
And I think what I want to invite in the idea of a goal is that the goal could be very specific to you. It could be like some people are like words, some people are like, oh, I want a complete manuscript. And I've been really working on it, especially because, I'll have writing residencies. And whenever I go into a writing residency and I'm like, I'm going to finish my draft. I'm going to write, like just kind of like come with like, I always rebel against myself. And what I realized helps is like, what if I set my day up every day to have an enjoyable writing experience? So then it became, oh, well, what's my song I'm gonna listen to? What's the tea I'm gonna drink? You know, what are like all of the juicy clothes I like to wear that make me feel cozy? And sort of just be like, okay, I'm consistent with the ritual of creating a beautiful writing experience. And then the writing happens. And then it's like, oh, cool, great. So I think like the goal might, I mean, I at least part of what I want to encourage people when they think about their goals is as much as like, okay, it might be something very concrete and it might be something that's very around creating a writer's life that will extend beyond this cohort, you know, because I think that's, you know, to Hugh's point about the differing lengths of books, is that like if you're in tune with who you are and your writing and what feels good and what, you know, then because you could get done 100,000 words, but they could be shitty and don't live in what you feel good about as like what your writing is. Or you could write 10,000 words and you're like, wow, like I really was in a soulful, meaningful relationship with who I am as a writer, and I've created a piece of work that Toni Morrison could be proud of. You feel me? Just kidding. But like, yeah, I do think like just the longer I write, I realized because the novel I'm working on now, I done had so many deadlines. And I'm like to my editor, why are we even doing these deadlines anymore? Because the book is telling me, like, girl, you finna go to like I'm in New Orleans right now doing research for my novel. I didn't know I had to do that when I started writing my novel. So you might literally have to take certain trips, might need to hang out with some grandmas or somebody, you know, like so I think that's what I'm wanting to encourage people is like, how are you building an authentic relationship with your creativity so that you're like, oh, okay, the book is done, or I need to do this, or here's where my research is taking me, or I'm actually taking too much time. Because sometimes that's another thing with novels. You could research your ass off and think you writing your novel. And sometimes, you know, and I think with this shit, I don't know why the confetti is confettiing anyway, but you know, sometimes with these things, I like need to be like, Junauda, quit fucking thinking you researching and writing a book. Like you actually need to just fucking write and let it be messy and lower your standards. So I think part of this experience is like finding all of the different nuances that might shift your goal. Like you might go in, this is the goal, and then a month in, you're like, actually, this is really my goal. You know, so yeah.
Amazing. Do y'all have any questions for our students, alumni that are on the call? So we had Heather, we had Leah, and we had Dan. And Janana, yes, that was amazing. Yes to all the trips, for sure. And if you know you have a question for any of the alumni, after the call, please reach out to edu@loft.org, and we're happy to pass along your question. I'm going to take a look at the chat, but I think I was able to get to most of the questions. We might be able to get out of here a little early today, as we say at the Loft, giving people their time
Yeah,
back. Which is
I think there's one question for
oh,
the alumni.
all right, here we go. What was something unexpected you got from participating? I love that question. Leah, did you want to start us off since you have to get out of here?
Yeah, I was trying to think. I think the amount of learning from the other students in my cohort was surprising to me in a really lovely way, and the community we were able to build, even though it was online and through Zoom. You really do establish that rapport and connection, meeting weekly, even when it's on video. And because I have to jump, I'll answer the second question too about hours or days. I would say dedicated to writing a week. Kind of ebbed and flowed. But I would say, on my slower weeks, 5 or 6 hours a week, but then there were weeks where I maybe spent 15 hours when I was really digging into the manuscript. And then there were probably some weeks in there where maybe not much happened at all during breaks, and I just let myself have a break. So it really is what you make of it and where you want to dig in. But yeah, it felt like it was on a front burner for most of the year. Good luck, everyone. It was nice meeting you. I have to run, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Heather or Dan, did y'all want to share your
I can
perspective?
jump in. As far as my schedule went, I wrote Sunday through Wednesday, so 4 days a week. I broke it down, so I wrote about 2,500 words a week. And just for me, I just need that like structure. I had a whole like spreadsheet with a graph and everything. Thursday was class day, so I would catch up on what I had read for my classmates' work, so refresh myself and be ready to talk about it and then have class. Friday was a day of rest. Saturday was reading my classmates' work and getting ready for it to start over again. And then something unexpected I got, I knew intellectually that, you know, everybody has something to offer no matter what path they're walking on. I mean, of course I know that, but I really felt it through this class. Everybody brought so much to it through their writing and just through their personalities, but it was also so different. So many different genres and so many different life experiences and ways of approaching their own work and ways of approaching critique. So it really just widened my world and my appreciation of how many ways you can be a wonderful writer.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, unexpected, I would say, I, I was surprised at listening to the other people in our group and working, reading their works and all that. And I was able to learn from their own works what they were, because the people in our class would present, situations and hurdles that they were having. And then I found myself thinking about my own work that same way, even though their book could be totally different than mine. And or I would read their works and say, oh, I'm wondering, how that applies to me in my work. Uh, so the learning from my own writing was more than just my own words, but watching everybody else and their journeys and their writing processes, and I picked up a lot from that. As far as the number of hours, because I am retired and all that, I wound up spending up to 30 hours a week on it. Typically doing 3 hours a day of my own writing, sometimes more, and then more hours with reading everybody's in the classes, which is your feedback and your work on other people's works in the class is a gift. And I really appreciated everybody's work that they did on my writing, and so I tried to reciprocate as much as possible.
Thanks, Dan. That's great. I know this is a little backwards, but for folks who are on this call, prospective students, if you wanted to share about, what project you're working on or what you hope to accomplish, which cohort you're interested in, I would love to hear from y'all. Yeah, we have some time, so if anyone wanted to share.
Did you want us to use our voice or to
Yeah.
typing? Okay. I go by JM, but my people call me JJ. But I'm working on a poetry chapbook. I'm also working on my memoir. So I intend to take some classes on that later down the line. Yeah, so just working on my chapbook, it's not very fun for me without other people like involved. I tend to second guess myself a lot, even though like I'm not necessarily that way about many things in my life, but when it comes to writing, I am, and I don't know why. So I could use some help. Thanks. Oh, and I'm in Minneapolis
Oh, awesome.
with dogs trying to eat my food.
for sharing.
I'm in Minneapolis as well, and I've got cats looking at me hungrily, like, why didn't you feed us 90 minutes ago? But I'm working on think upmarket fiction. We'll just get through the classification, and if it's on one side of that or the other. But it is going okay. I think I've drafted in what I've plotted 19 chapters out of 30, so there's content there, but there's so much to be edited, so much to work through. And it's non-chronological, which requires all of the plotting, and definitely I'm looking for community and how it hits, because there's a lot of really complicated characters, but I've been playing with point of view, and I don't know if anything is conveying to a reader, because right now it's just all in my head. So yeah, excited about it, but definitely looking for a place in a workshop and a community where it can grow and I can help others grow their projects too.
Great. It's great to hear from you, Cozy.
I can jump in too. I'm Jack. I'm wearing a yellow hat. I'm kind of between things. I finished my first book, I guess a couple months ago, and I'm working on, sending queries out, which is just so fun. And yeah, rolling around my second book that I'm like kind of ready to start, but ish. I mean, it's a very fresh. I had a few ideas of what I thought I was going to do next, and then I had this completely different idea, and I'm just going to follow that. So yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, I think to echo what other people have been saying, more than anything, I just have been excited to build community, to meet some fellow writers, because it is very solitary, which I like. But like Cozy, like you were just saying, it's like this thing exists only in your head, and it's like what even is it? Like it's impossible to have any objectivity about it. And also just like the writer's life in general. I yearn to connect with people about it. So thank you all.
Happy to have you.
Oh, I'm in Minneapolis as well. Just want to put that out there.
Okay. Awesome.
And then
Yeah. Hey, Angela.
I'm also in Minneapolis, and I echo everything everybody, Jack, Cozy, and Jam have been saying. I've write like little flash fiction stuff that I've had published, but I have been trying to write a novel for I think all of my life. And this time I really landed on something that excites me, and the characters do call to me. But I'm like 3 chapters in, and I have my epilogue and my prologue done, and I have like uh I have it plotted out, kind of like my act 3. I know how it's going to end. But I feel like I kind of struggle a little bit with the characters, kind of bringing them alive and having them be their own people, even though I journal about them. I joke with my kids, like, if you ever read my journals and you'd be like, what? It's probably one of my characters, because I try to get in their head. And so I also am looking for a community of people, of writers that can give some good, some constructive feedback. So it's not always, like Cozy said, just in my head. I look at it like, yeah, this is great, but it probably sucks. And I do suffer a little bit from I guess I also question my writing, especially when I'm reading other novels, and I think, wow, this is fantastic, and then I go back to mine. Can mine hold up to that? So I'm looking for that community, and it is solitary. I do like the solitary, but I also like what you said, Jack, to be able to just have like-minded people and be around that and build those relationships. So mine's more of a psychological thriller. I don't know if anyone was saying what theirs was, but so
Great.
Well, I guess I will go last. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm a retiree. my fellow Dan Johnson. I didn't come to writing. It's all accidental. I'm actually a full-time traveler, and I use writing and reading as my metaphorical wives. I'm in love with them. For some reason, I have to write, I have to read. But I have some concubines and some old girlfriends called bicycling, backpacking, and photography. And those have kept me from finishing up a lot of everything that I've written. I'm actually in the process of trying to go ahead and put all of what I've done through National Novel Writing Month, other classes I've taken around the country, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Santa Fe, Astoria, Washington. There's beautiful places in Miss Junauda, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Junauda.
Junauda. Preach, girl. It's been a while since I've heard from other writers and hang out with you all. It really inspires me. I will be through Minneapolis because I'm currently in Edinburgh, Texas. I'm wintering Texas down here. I pull my RV. I have my own blog site, so I dedicate a lot of time to those writings, and I'm starting to put my short stories and some of my poetry there also. But I love this loft program, and I will be through there. The young man who spoke on the poetry side, nature has been a straight unbelievable influence because I hang out in it so much. And I began writing poetry out of Glacier National Park and the whole river on the Washington Peninsula. It's just something that comes from within. Thank you all. I want to thank every one of you to help me realign what I need to do. I would love to start in June, but I already got some outdoor activities planned.
Well, I appreciate you joining us and
Like
story. Yeah.
I'd love to share if we still have
Yeah.
time.
No,
Hi, my name
absolutely.
is Lawanda Rognes. I live right outside of the Minneapolis, but I've been taking some courses over the last year and a half with the Loft, and I am working on a fiction novel. And it really deals with the exploration of generational trauma, resilience, and just the quiet ways that women hold each other up. Um, I've been kind of working on this book for probably 5 years, but I would say in the last year or so, it's really been gnawing at me. Something that I kind of can't drop. And so that's when I really decided to invest in taking loft classes and being part of that. So I'm really excited for this year-long program. And so I'm hoping to kind of collaborate with other writers. I've enjoyed every loft class I've taken so far. And I know last year I just didn't feel quite ready enough to sign up, but this year I feel like this is the time to go for it. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. We do have time, so Dex or Nathalie, if you're interested in sharing, feel free. Don't feel pressured. I don't think I can hear you, Dex.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Thank you.
All right. So I'm Dex. I live in North Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I'm listening to Junauda, and Junauda, I was at your award ceremony, so congrats once again. And everything you're saying speaks to me. I am bursting at the seams. I have never written a book before. This is new territory for me. I have never considered myself a writer, and lots of folks have been just dropping to me that I should write. And I got a lot to say, and I have never been able to put words to paper like this in my life. It's just falling out of me, and it's all been coming together for me. I went to Creating Change conference. It's a queer conference, been around 40 years, and met a lot of writers who have been supporting me, and that happened in January, and just been kind of moving through that process, having the daily rituals. I have a very open life where I can fill in time to do this and have the space and time to do it. So it kind of all lines up for me. My biggest concern, honestly, is picking the right class. my book is more of like a coming of age memoir is the best way to explain it. And so I just you have so many different genres. I don't really know where it fits and if where is appropriate. And I know you have, so I don't really know where that would all go. I don't know if you have any feedback or someone I can email about that or anything like that.
You said you were interested in Junauda's cohort?
I was, but I don't know if it's appropriate for what I'm writing. I don't know how you all divide things up. So
Well, you are always, so they both of them dropped their emails in the chat. So
yep,
either he or Junauda, you can reach out to them and talk a little bit more about the project. When registration opens, you can also join the wait list and set up that one-on-one as well.
fantastic. I will do so. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Yes, great comment from Heather. It does sometimes take a couple years to get up to wanting to apply. So if not this time, we look forward to seeing y'all hopefully in a future cohort. But it's great that you're able to join now and get some information. All right. Any other questions for myself, any of the teaching artists? I'm going to stop the recording then and